Hi, good afternoon to everybody for joining us. Welcome to Professional Quest Finance and Real Estate. We look forward to an afternoon of discussion about careers in finance and real estate. But before we start, we have an announcement. So as many of you know or may not know, this academic year, we launched a minor in real estate. And since some of you are here, interested in real estate, we thought it'd be a good time for the director of minors for the School of Business to sort of explain what the minor is and maybe if you're interested, how to follow up. So before we start the panel, I'll turn it over to Jeremy Plutnik, the director for minors for the School of Business.
Thank you, Eric. And hello, everyone. I'll be very brief. Those of you who may have had me as a professor, I'm not lying. I will be very brief. So yes, we did launch the real estate development minor earlier this year, and its pickup has been good so far. It's actually one of our faster growing new minors. And I'll give you a little rundown and then some new news on it. And the minor itself is for anybody who's interested in the real estate industry, broadly speaking, whether you're interested in urban planning, sales and marketing, construction, or of course, finance. The minor has courses for you. The minor has at this point one required course, and that's the new news. And then you can take 4 elective courses, and the elective courses run a gamut. They include things in the marketing field, the management discipline, finance, engineering, geography and geospatial sciences, as well as government, then from the planning side or public policy side. So there's a wide range of opportunities for you to explore in this minor to give you some solid grounding in the real estate industry before you enter the work world. Now, the new news is, and this is just, hot off the presses, I just came from the faculty meeting literally 5 minutes ago where this was approved. We do have one required course for the minor, and that's Finance 351, Principles of Real Estate. The catalog still says we have 2, which also include Finance 454, Real Estate Development. This is now an elective course, an optional course. So it makes it easier for those of you who are juniors to approach this minor and know that you'll be able to finish it within the year. Sophomores are also welcome to explore this minor. And depending on what courses you've already taken, seniors may want to talk to academic advising because they may be able to squeeze it in if you've already taken a couple of the courses in your program. So that's what I wanted to say. It's a great minor. You'll be joining a great group of people. You have a lot of choices in terms of the courses to take, and there's now only one required course for this minor. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line or talk to anybody at the academic advising unit at the School of Business. Thank you very much. Eric, back to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And one final announcement, a group of students have now launched the first student organization on commercial real estate called the Real Estate Association. If you're interested to join, please register directly on the Mason 360 website and look up Real Estate Association, or you can email them at gmurealestate@outlook.com. So now that we have that out of the way, we want to go to our panel this afternoon. And I wanted to introduce everybody and then launch into some Q&A. So if you have any questions while our speakers are presenting, if you could just put them in the chat and we will get your questions after we have some presentations from our speakers. So our first speaker today is Nicholas Jensen. He's the Senior Director of Education for the Institutional Limited Partners Association. He's an accomplished financial services and data management professional with deep experience leading large operational departments and programs within the institutional investment space. So welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Our second panelist is Jacob Partridge. He's a high net worth financial advisor for Vanguard. And as a financial planner, Jacob works with individuals to help increase their chances of success in achieving financial goals through planning for investment, estate, insurance, and retirement planning. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have Chris Rodriguez, Senior Vice President for Trammell Crow. He's a vice president with the Mid-Atlantic office of Trammell Crow Company, a leading national real estate developer, specializing in commercial office, healthcare, and industrial and multifamily product types. He's responsible for identifying, analyzing, and originating ground-up development and value-add investment opportunities. Prior to joining Trammell, Chris worked with Holiday Finoleau Fowler's New York City Debt and Equity Capital Markets team, where he executed approximately $2 billion of debt and equity real estate financing. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sean Arma, a Senior Credit Officer of Capital One. Sean covers real estate, commercial real estate group at Capital One. He was formerly Director of Real Estate Investment Trust Finance at Wells Fargo and started his banking career with MidFirst Bank in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks. Afternoon, everyone.
Next, we have Charlie Smiraldo, Managing Director of Stream Realty. He's responsible for managing all construction and development projects for Stream's Washington, D.C. office. Prior to Stream, he served 5 years as a Senior Manager of Construction and Development for First Potomac Realty Trust, one of the largest landlords in the Washington, D.C. region. He is also a Mason alum with a master's in real estate development. Welcome, Charlie.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, we have Kathleen Cox, Director of Tech Horizons, LLC. Tech Horizons is a business and management consulting firm, but we have Ms. Cox here as well with 25 years of experience in commercial real estate project development, management, operations, and business development. Welcome, Kathleen. So maybe we'd start off by, I wanted to ask each of our panelists to sort of tell our students sort of your career story, where you went to school, what you did for your undergrad, and how you sort of ended up in the finance or real estate career that you have today, and sort of any big insights that you have that you wanted to share with our undergrads here of how your career kind of unfolded. So maybe we'll start with Nicholas.
Sure, thank you. Well, interesting place to start is I don't have a traditional background in finance. I actually have a degree in social and developmental psychology. I studied at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, greatest city in the world. I'm a little bit biased, I grew up there. But I came to the United States, and I will admit that during my time at university, I didn't think as much around how to build a career. It was more what I was interested in. But as I started to talk to friends, family, really anybody that would sit down and have lunch with me, I really started to hear themes around finance, business, the private sector. And so that led me on a journey to a firm called Cambridge Associates, actually in Arlington, Virginia, global, but also in Arlington, Virginia. And so I was fortunate, even though I didn't have any finance background, to get an opportunity within their, at the beginning point, their fund data management team. This is basically handling all of the information and data coming in from investment managers across the spectrum of investment types. From there, I was able to build a real, true lifelong passion for operations, learning, development, and active management. And, I will say that when I came into a role, I sort of narrowed my focus in a traditional sense. I said, I'll come in, I'll spend the first year becoming really proficient at the role. I'll begin my CFA journey, and then maybe in X amount of years, I can move across to a hedge fund, become an investment guy, an investment person. And one thing I was really, really fortunate to have in my life was managers and others at the organization that were willing to challenge me on those preconceived notions of who I was going to be and what I wanted to do. And they began to really encourage me to look into operations management and leadership elements within the industry. And so after a few volleys back and forth, they said, look, just take on a team lead role. And within 3 months, I recognized that the active role of leadership, helping people deliver their best, and within the sleeve of operations, which is all the mechanics to make things work, I became very passionate and then decided to redirect all of my energy and attention to pursue. And from there, I was able to work across a number of functions in our, from fund management to investment operations to performance reporting. I was given the opportunity to go over to Singapore and help launch their operations office. So from Arlington to Singapore for a number of years and then back. And so that also opened up global perspective and awareness. And then more recently, I transitioned to join ILPA Institutional Limited Partners with a particular focus on education and helping institutional investors or limited partners, so like a university endowment, pension funds, you name it, from the most junior level individuals in the organization to the most senior, offering them a range of education. Because for us, our ability to help our members become better investors means that they can make better decisions, and as a result, the beneficiaries, like whether it be the students that go to a school or the beneficiaries of a pension fund, can achieve and get more. And so, what I would encourage is a little bit of advice is I think we all feel a lot of pressure to have a multifaceted, clear, detailed plan. Having something to aim at is helpful, but be open and be willing to adapt and evolve and take things on, because it will open up avenues and shift directions in your career.
Great advice, Nicholas. Thank you. Charlie, hand the baton to you next.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Look, I to answer your question, Eric, I got into commercial real estate by chance. I went to Radford University in Southwestern Virginia. I went there to play baseball, actually, and studied art and design. Coming out of college, I knew I wanted to do something with my hands, and I thought I was going to be a carpenter. And I got into commercial construction. So I had zero basis as it relates to what commercial real estate was, what even commercial construction was at that point in time. But as I dug in, I worked for a great small company that valued people at the end of the day, and knew that they could take good people and teach them construction, right? Which is what happened at the end of the day. But I shortly realized that there was more to just building a project. There was the front end piece of it that relates to creativity and programming. And I yearned for that. I went back to my creative ways from the art days. And that led me to a real estate investment trust where I got to learn about the different facets really of the real estate process. And, it took me kind of going through that process and then really setting a lofty goal for myself. I said, what do I really want to do? And I told myself I wanted to own my own office building. And I said, okay, well, how am I going to do that? Well, being a construction manager could get me part of the way there because I could probably go build the building, but I didn't know the legalities of it. I didn't know the finance side of it. And so that really thrusted me into wanting to go back to school. And I actually went back to George Mason and got my master's in real estate development. So I coupled kind of the institutional knowledge gained through school and experience and coupled that with a very entrepreneurial company that I work for now, Stream Realty Partners. And it has afforded me the ability to be an office owner. Albeit I don't own an office building outright. I have part interest in an office building based on the way our structure of our company works. So I think the advice that I can give to you is kind of similar to Nicholas's, right? Like these lofty goals, like you got to set something, but you're going to pivot a couple of times to get to where you want to go. And you're going to learn things from each job or each role that you have that'll hopefully get you to where you want to be at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Definitely one of our best students out of the program. And then Sean, turn it over to you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So my story, similar to Charlie, my path, I stumbled into commercial real estate. In college, I went to Arizona State University, and I was a general business major, just business administration, and didn't know exactly where I wanted to focus in business. but I knew if I had some finance and accounting background, I remember looking at the majors and salaries coming out, and I saw, okay, finance and accounting majors, made decent money. So I said, okay, let me do that. I figure I'll find myself in a good spot. And came out with an internship with Honeywell in financial reporting and controllership. And it was a great opportunity just to understand the nuts and bolts in practice of what I was learning in academia from an accounting and finance perspective. And got a job offer for graduated college, take that offer and, run with it. And it was a great opportunity to learn, like I said, nuts and bolts in practice. But what I found was I was looking for more variety in what I was working on a day-to-day basis in my job. And so just in some personal career exploration, I stumbled upon lending, so banking, and talking with professionals in the industry. They were like, if you like learning about different things, lending is a great avenue for that. So I made a transition into banking. And it was a unique opportunity where as a bank coming into the Phoenix market, they'd never been in that market. I was the first analyst they hired. So I worked on everything from commercial real estate and private banking to corporate banking, wealth management. So I saw it all. So it was great for me and just learning. But in the continued evolution of learning, I wanted to get to a position where I was at what they call the money center banks that are creating the financial packages for the larger borrowers. And had opportunity to move over to Wells Fargo, where I was in a training program and then got to choose where I wanted my discipline to be. So here's another pivot, and my pivot was into investor real estate, because a lot of what I'd done previous was owner-occupied real estate that the commercial customers owned. And it was a unique time as we're coming out of the great financial crisis, and got to see a lot of different real estate around the country and a lot of different structures. Really became an investor real estate lender. And then a unique opportunity to start their national platform in real estate investment trusts, like Charlie had mentioned, where that brought in capital markets perspectives and DCM, ECM. So that was always an interest for me as well, along with economics. So, kind of a path where I would tell you it wasn't intentional on each step that I took. But similar to what Nicholas and Charlie said, I think for me, if you have an aptitude for always learning and just the intellectual curiosity, and you combine that with a work ethic and a strong attitude, doors will open for you that you probably can't even imagine, that are in front of you today.
Right. Thank you, Sean. Kathleen?
Got that mute button working finally.
We
Thanks,
can hear
Eric.
you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Again, my name is Kathleen Cox. I've been in the real estate development industry for the last 25 plus years. My background, I started out as a civil engineer. I went to the University of Delaware and then went on to get my MBA from Boston University. And I started out in engineering because I really liked the building environment. I always worked in that with my father. And unfortunately, at the time, I didn't realize I probably should have gone into architecture as opposed to engineering. But anyway, I went through engineering anyway. It was certainly a great foundation. It ended up being that I graduated at a time that I needed to move to Boston for another reason, unbeknownst to me at the time. But so I worked in the nuclear energy field, and it was a there were a lot of nuclear plants being built at the time. So not to say that they were architecturally significant, but very recognizable if you're near one for sure. And was in that industry for a number of years until I moved to Virginia for another reason unbeknownst to me at the time. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to kind of connect with more traditional building design. And I took a position for a real estate development company that built offices in Tyson's Corner and Rockville and Bethesda. And so I learned the business. Having had the engineering foundation, I learned the business in a more financial oriented way, right? So you go from the bricks and sticks to learning how to make sense of it from a monetary perspective. And that was really important, of course. Dealing with the banks, and then with a number of different elements of the big picture, architecture, and other parts of engineering like mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and construction, which I didn't have a background in. So that was really a lot of fun. I was in that arena when Tyson's was just coming up into being, if you will. It had some buildings and some commercial property, but it doesn't look like it does today. So a lot of the buildings there were built in the 90s, and that's about the time that a lot of the well-known institutions and investors, et cetera, came into being in the Tyson's and DMV marketplace. So in addition to development, I have also worked in asset management, so operating existing properties for institutional investors, and then most recently added business development to the picture. So if you look at the development timeline for a traditional structure from conception through design and the financial picture, through execution, delivery, and then operations, I ended up getting that experience through many different it wasn't planned, as someone said. Like I think Sean and Nick, you both had said, it wasn't necessarily planned that way, but it worked out really well. And the one thing that I can suggest is that, you're using your foundation, whatever it may be, to move to the next step. And look at that next step as something that is going to inspire you, to, use your intellect and your energy and your focus to do something that is of interest and also contributing to the betterment of the area around you, like a lot of these buildings do that we're talking about. That's all I guess I could say, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thanks, Kathleen. Jacob?
Yeah, thanks. Really enjoy being here and being able to answer students' questions. There's a zeal when you come to a university for learning and intellect. And ultimately, my career progression has just been kind of following that and being flexible and adaptable, like everyone else is on the panel has said. And, I went to school originally thinking I was going to go into operations and supply chain management. And then I took an internship because I wanted to make sure that I understood finance, right? Because I wanted to be smart with money, and everything that we do in our lives deals with money. And so during that internship, I found what my passion was, and wasn't necessarily planned like everyone else is saying. But once you find that passion, take that step, right? Follow what you enjoy doing, work hard at it, and you'll really find success in that. And that's what's led me to Vanguard, where I currently help other people do that exact thing day to day. I work with many different clients with a lot of different backgrounds, and we're really just nailing down what their goals are, what their passions are, and how we can allocate their finite resources to those passions and help them achieve whatever it may be through retirement, investing in real estate, investing in stocks and bonds, those types of things. And I would just encourage all the students today that be open, ask those questions, be curious, and when you find your passion, pursue it.
Thanks, Jacob. And Chris? You're still on mute, Chris.
Sorry about that. Sure. Great to meet everybody, even though it's virtual, I know. And I think I'll echo some of the comments before. I think they're all very well said. And I can tell you a little bit about my history and background, and everything. So I actually grew up in Connecticut and came down to go to UVA, and I was an economics major there. Actually started in engineering, so was going to do what Kathleen was doing, and realized I was not quite as good at math as I thought I was in high school when I was doing all that. So I was humbled, let's say the least, by the first couple calc classes there. Pivoted to economics, and during that time, I did a lot of what people have said and got internships. So I did an internship before my junior year of college with Deutsche Bank in New York, and this was during the go-go days of real estate finance, which I'm sure Eric's told you about. But they were, doing, it was on their CMBS team. And so I did that for a summer and really enjoyed it, liked it a lot, thought it was a good industry for me and my skill set, and what wasn't to enjoy at that point. And then I did another internship with CBRE in New York City between my junior and senior year. And that was the summer of 07, because I graduated in 08, and actually had an offer to go with them. And that fell apart. Just to give you an idea, that period of time was very difficult. So that offer evaporated while I was still back at school for my senior year, and ended up taking a role in DC, which, to be honest with you, was not where I had intended to go. After school, I'd always sort of wanted to go back up to the New York, Connecticut area. That was where I was, but and took it with a company called Capital Source, which at the time was a real estate lender, structured finance. And again, this was a tough time, and I did that for 2 years. It was a great experience. It was great to have a job at being a young person during that period of time. And then I switched to HFF up in New York, and that's where I really started to get really deep into the real estate industry. I was working on developments and debt and equity and everything, and I did that for a couple of years. Which phenomenal experience in the brokerage world. I would highly recommend that to anyone that's looking to get into real estate, to check out the brokerage firms. They hire a lot of people, which is one big thing. They also, I think the skill set you get there is phenomenal, whether you want to stay in that long term or not. And then I actually went back to UVA to get an MBA, and that was something that I'd always sort of had on my radar, and wanted to sort of pivot from brokerage to maybe more of a developer type or private equity role, and explored that for 2 years there, and found a great fit here with Trammell. So I've been here for about 8 years in DC again, and it's where my wife was from, which was a big reason we focused on here. And I've been working on everything. I've really recently, the last couple of years, focused on industrial, and which is building warehouses and everything, which has become, during the COVID, a huge component. I've also done office like Charlie, and I will be honest, when I came out of school, I thought building the biggest, fanciest office building in downtown DC or downtown New York was all I would ever do. And lo and behold, I'm building buildings up on 81 that I used to, make my trek from Connecticut down to Charlottesville. I never would have imagined that my career would take me to those farms and building out there. But that's just a good example of how things change. And I'm happy to answer any questions and about my background, and look forward to telling you more that can help with your career.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. So internship seems to be a recurring theme for our students watching out there. I'd like to ask the first question, and then hopefully we'll get to some student questions in a bit. First question I'd like to ask everybody is, so what sort of skills or characteristics do you look for in either people that you hire or people that you want to work with within your company? Maybe those are something that our students can help develop while they're still in school, or aspire to develop as they enter the workforce. So maybe let's start with Sean on that question.
Sure. Some of the things I look for, one is, I mentioned this earlier, intellectual curiosity. You got to have a bent towards learning. There's so much that you just don't know. There's acronyms, there's analysis you've never done. And the only way that you are going to get up that learning curve is to just be curious and ask those questions and then dig in. And then that's where you're really going to find out where you're able to match your strengths. And then you're able to have the building blocks to start to become proficient in what you're doing. So then with that, I would say, in a finance world, attention to detail is always something that's big, right? We're dealing with numbers. We're dealing with, we're analyzing and we're taking that analysis to make decisions. So your attention to detail in your work product goes a long way in enabling us to make good decisions. And then another trait I would say is people that are able to take a concept, understand that concept, dig in, and then apply it for the next concept. A lot of what we do, they build on each other, right? But you have to understand that first piece, really well before you go to the next piece. And that's where it said, you'll find, you may be a novice one day, but then you turn and look 6 months, a year later, and you'd be surprised how much you know. And then where you're able to be a value add and provide valuable insights based upon what you know in the work that you've done.
Okay. Charlie, any comments on that one?
Yeah, well, so first and foremost, Stream's core values are nice, smart, honest, and passionate, right? And I think the first three I said are pretty self-explanatory, right? But I think passion, right? I think you got to have a passion for anything that you're working on, and it needs to be able to kind of show through whatever you're doing. And then to add to what Sean said, you got to have patience, right? I mean, none of us got to where we're at today, day one, right? And so I say, I correlate patience with experience, right? That with great experience will come a great work product at the end of the day. And I think lastly, you need to have emotional intelligence, right? And that again is something that's gained over time in working through different situations and understanding different people that you might cross, because not every conversation is had the same way with the same people. And I think to be able to understand that will make you really great at your craft, whatever that might be.
Okay. Nicholas?
Yeah, all great examples. I'll just emphasize, along the lines of emotional intelligence is really building the craft of communication. And I don't just mean professional communication, but really developing the skills of how do I synthesize my thoughts and ideas and be versatile in the way I can communicate those to impact people, and then as a result, get buy-in and drive action. And so really being thoughtful about when you're going for conversations, take the time, think about it. What's the most logical, clear way for me to communicate this? Who's the person that's receiving it? Do they have a lot of time? Do they have a lot of understanding? What complexity of language or terminology do I use? Just really becoming hyper aware of communicating for others. And then the other one I'll plug is just from a finance background is maybe not the sexiest, but Excel. Microsoft Excel. The amount of times I see on a resume, like super experienced, advanced, there are many, many, many levels to that. And it can be a huge difference maker in your ability to, move and operate quickly and get things done. So don't undermine the power of Excel still. I know we have a lot of great analytics platforms and so forth, but nothing beats a good spreadsheet that's well designed. So that was the other one that I'd throw out there.
That actually is something that we've been trying to find a good way to impart to our students as they leave in join the workforce. Jacob?
Yeah, I think what Charlie said about communication is really important. We look for individuals that can communicate clearly what they're wanting to accomplish, but also what they need to communicate to individuals, because you're going to interact with many people throughout your career. And so focusing on those communication skills, both written and verbal, are essential. And then, yeah, technology. If you can learn how to use the different types of technologies, every company is going to have different type of technology. Most of them come back to, a lot of the Microsoft stuff, such as Access Database or Excel and those types of things. So focusing your time on developing those skills and using LinkedIn to do that and to network. If you can network with individuals, I think that's really important. So networking sometimes gets a bad rap because it's like, hey, you got to reach out to this stranger to discuss something. But in reality, networking is just your sphere of influence, right? So communicating with your professors and developing that relationship and asking those questions, or those that you associate with through work, or those that through LinkedIn or other social media platforms. Those are certainly things that are important. If you're involved in clubs or extracurricular activities at school, those are certainly things that we look for, because it shows that you're willing to go outside of yourself. You're willing to try new things and learn. And those are certainly things that are important for us as an employer to know, and that you'll translate that to the business as well.
Kathleen, what do you look for in hiring and working with people?
So on the working with people side, in addition to asking a lot of questions and being curious, as Sean mentioned, I would say that it would be great idea to find a mentor. Okay, a mentor is somebody that could put things in perspective, right? Because we all work in different areas of the real estate development industry, but I think what gets lost early on in one's career is, where does what I do fit into the overall picture of the industry? And it pretty much follows the development timeline, really. Stay curious, ask questions, find somebody that you can go to, or different folks maybe you can go to for different questions, but someone who's going to help you understand the context of things. You're not going to know the entire market till down the road a piece. So yeah, definitely have patience. And I think Jacob, you said something about networking. I would suggest joining associations, industry associations. They have educational programs oftentimes that are complementary to what you learn in school. And you'll get to meet other people if you join committees, which will become your network, basically. And you could reach out to them anytime and ask them questions as well. So you can capitalize on, folks just, well, how do I say this? You'll be able to connect with other folks, perhaps just starting out in the industry, and share information. In terms of hiring, definitely the technical computer skills are important. And someone mentioned not just Microsoft suite of products, but also being able to use a CRM system, a client services system. And, Salesforce is, of course, one of them, but there are many others. And that's a great way to make connections as well, if you're good at that. And then the other thing too is just, kind of goes back to knowing how to talk to people, and thanking people for helping you, and having the wherewithal to get back to folks after they've spent time with you and thank them for what they've done. Just basic, connection and consideration with others in the business and elsewhere. And the other thing I'll say, not hiring so much, but going back to networking, staying in touch with your professors. Oftentimes they can connect you with people in the industry, or know folks that you may not have connected with yet, which can also further your career. So that's all I'll say.
And Chris, any advice?
Sure, I think a lot of it's been said. I guess one thing I would just add, sort of what Jacob and Charlie were saying, I agree 100% with the passion piece. which I recognize is sort of a catch-22 from where you're sitting today. How are you supposed to be passionate about something that you haven't been doing? And I was in the same boat, and it's always been a difficult thing to persuade people. But to what Jacob said, the way at your age to get that across, I think, is join the clubs, show up to the events, and then also adding on to what Nick said is, go take the I'm not sure what George Mason offers, and I talked to Eric about it, but when I was in school, you could take Excel classes and Argus classes through the real estate club. And those type of things just present very well in an interview format of saying, hey, I took the initiative to do this. This is, what I want to do. And this is why I stand out above others. And the last thing I would say is, it's just, you can join ULI and NAIOP. I know I'm not sure what that costs for students. I think it is fairly subsidized, but also just, join BizNow and read the articles and know what's going on in real estate. So when someone asks you for an opinion on what you think, no one's going to judge, if it's right or wrong or what they think or not. But if you have like a well thought out, this is what I've been reading about and everything, that goes a long way, I think, when you are talking to people and trying to differentiate yourself. Last thing I'd add is you're coming out at a good time. Some of us on here were not nearly as fortunate. I think the job market, from what I can tell, is humming, and it should be for a little bit longer. So take advantage of those, that being the wind being at your back for that.
It's interesting that almost all of you are emphasizing not just the hard skills of what people learn in the classroom, but the soft skills, the communication, the networking, the attitude, passion. So I think those are really good advice for people to work on. Let's go to some specific student questions. So the first question has to do with somebody who's interested in brokerage, real estate brokerage. So maybe Charlie, I throw this to you since your company does a little bit of this. So this person is interested in being a young tenant rep broker in office or retail. So what would be your advice to somebody who wants to break into the commercial real estate brokerage space? And maybe Chris, since you mentioned some of this as well, maybe you can follow up with an answer to the student on commercial brokerage.
Well, I think probably the path of least resistance would be through some sort of internship, right? So most of the folks that start off at a lower level here within our firm is through an internship, right? And they start out as an analyst, right? And brokerage, in my opinion, is an art, right? And it's something that you can be taught, but it's a craft that is often shadowed, right? Because a lot of times it's more people focused. It's more on the soft skills, as Eric mentioned. A lot of it has to do with the emotional intelligence and communication skills, especially on the tenant rep side, right? I think there's tenant rep work and then there's landlord rep work. The two are grossly different, in my opinion. One is more real estate based, and one is more relationship based. So I think my recommendation to you, whoever asked that question, would be to look at all the large real estate services firms that are out there. There's a handful of them. They all have internship programs: CBRE, JLL, Stream Realty Partners, Edge, KNLB, you name it. They all have programs. And I think my recommendation to anybody in real estate looking to enter into it, sacrifice salary, right? I think you're going to have to, at some point, sacrifice salary to get the education that is needed. Recognize that people that are going to be mentoring you and coaching you along the way have a lot of experience, right? And so understand that the value that comes along with that.
Hey, Chris, any follow-up?
Yeah, so for tenant rep specifically, office tenant rep, I think what Charlie said is right on. It's all through networking through George Mason. Probably, I'm sure there's plenty of George Mason folks that are doing that in the DC area. And I hate saying this, but being aggressive, like that industry, Charlie, is all about aggressiveness, but being aggressive with emotional intelligence. It is not really a heavy numbers game, at least for what I can tell. It's all about convincing the tenant you're going to get them the best deal and the building they want to be at. So it's a little different. Like I was doing capital markets brokerage, which is a little bit more numbers focused, not a little bit, a lot more numbers focused. Tenant rep is definitely emphasized soft skills. I would say that's probably one area of the business that's not growing at the moment, especially on the office side. You're seeing it certainly in industrial and other asset types. It is growing rapidly. So I would just not, that shouldn't stop you from doing it. It's an incredibly lucrative career, to be honest with you. But it will probably be a little bit more difficult to get into. But yeah, use the networks. Those internship programs are really improved. I know one thing CB is doing, CB technically owns Trammell Crow Company, is to your point, Charlie, about the salaries. You know, it's not, you're not going to get, you know, the salary that Wells Fargo is going to pay or right off the bat, I don't think, but there is a concerted effort at all these companies now to try to rethink the compensation model at the younger level, because it's difficult, right? It's, you know, and so I wouldn't, hopefully that does take form, and I think they are trying to figure out, so it's not just a draw. It used to just be a draw, I think. So they would say, we'll give you 30 grand, you pay it back when you make it. But it's not like that. There's true like salaries now and everything, which I think is positive for this, because they're trying to build a young workforce. A lot of the people in tenant rep are frankly a little older right now. So it would be a good career to pursue.
Let me add to what I was saying, because Chris made a good point there. I mean, CBRE is a great example. They do a wheel program. I think Savills does a wheel program as well, where you can kind of come in there and you can learn from a lot of different people in a lot of different roles, right? And, you know, your opportunity may not be at this point in time to get in and be a tenant rep, but you can go be an owner's rep or a landlord rep and get really great experience, understand how the other side of the table works, which ultimately could probably make you a better tenant rep in understanding how to protect your clients. So I think going back to some of our earlier comments, like you're going to pivot a couple times. Like it's cool to have a focus goal right now, but don't let that focus goal, you know, make you have blinders, right? Understand that there's other opportunities that can get you back to where you need to be at the end of the day.
Okay. Our next question has to do with graduate school. The student wants to know, do you need to get a master's degree? Does it guarantee higher positions or salary? What do you recommend to look for in graduate programs? Maybe we throw this to Sean and then maybe Jacob.
So from my perspective, you don't need a graduate master's degree, although it would help. So I have plenty of peers that have ascended, you know, through banking and commercial real estate without a master's degree. I'd be one of them. You know, I ascended through, right, my jobs and excelling at the roles that I was afforded. But then, you know, I also have plenty of peers that, you know, have gone back to school. One, either because they wanted to pivot from what they were doing before, and it was hard to find that entry, right? So sometimes if you do start down one career path and you want to choose another derivation of that career path, a master's degree affords you the ability to do that without taking a step back. And then as far as from a you know, salary perspective, job perspective, you know, I would tell you it does give you an entry into the door, but I wouldn't rely on that as the end all, right? If you do not have the basic level skills, it's going to be hard for you to supplant somebody that has been in that one line of business for a longer period of time than, you know, if you're coming in, you know, with just the degree. So that's the perspective I give you.
Jacob, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think Sean nailed it. I'm actually wrapping up my MBA this semester. So my motivation wasn't because of salary, because in reality, it doesn't do anything for my current position. But it comes back to a lot of the theme that's been mentioned here in terms of that intellectual curiosity and expanding what your skill set base is, and a master's program can help facilitate that. And it also helps facilitate your network, right? The master's program that I am in is very heavily based in group projects and presentations, and I've been able to develop really strong relationships with those individuals as we've kind of gone through the fire in terms of putting together these business case presentations, right? And so there's some value to that, and it certainly will help you as you continue to progress through your career, but it's not necessary. And then you don't have to have one to do well, right? It's all the other things we've talked about, from the soft skills in communicating, working within your sphere of influence, and helping just being really good at hardworking, right? So being good at your job.
Okay. So next question is, what sorts of skills or experience do students need to show to be considered well for an internship? So I guess the question is, how can they present themselves so that they have a higher chance of landing an internship? And maybe we'll throw this to Nicholas and Kathleen. So Nicholas and then Kathleen.
Sure. I think, like one thing, I think it's about standing out. And so, do your homework, do some investigation, research the organization, even use LinkedIn, look at the background of the people you're talking to, get an idea of that. I mean, to me, there's a clear distinction when you're talking with person A versus person B in terms of the level of preparation. And I think that number one shows a real drive and interest, but number two, also, it generally leads to having much more constructive and engaging interviews and discussions, which I think is great, because whether you get the internship or not, I think you're taking a little bit more away from that conversation and so forth. Everything's a learning opportunity. I think the other thing as well is having a sort of clear story and narrative. Generally interviews start with, tell me about yourself, and you can go to all the things you've done on your resume, but put a little bit more effort into, like, what's the narrative? And I'll often say to people, tell me about yourself, and they go straight to the resume saying, I say, great, but tell me about yourself. And it's trying to integrate those things. So the power of story, building a narrative, can go a long way, because depending on the organization and depending how many others the people you remember and that really stand out will end up floating to the top in terms of opportunities.
Kathleen?
I agree with what Nicholas just said. Showing the thought behind why you want this internship, right? And I think be very clear as to whether this internship is something that is just going to be a part of what you're already doing, and then adding to your awareness and depth of knowledge, or are you looking at this internship to pivot into another area of real estate? Okay, so they the folks making the decision will have to be thinking about the intention of the internship, right? And it might be an internship where you pivot because you want to go into get your master's in real estate, right? Or it could be an internship where you're looking at a particular job in a particular company, where this internship might then add to your body of knowledge and all the different perspectives that you might bring to a job, a role. And then no one mentioned this yet, but some folks spend quite a bit of time in the real estate industry, and then we were talking about higher ed and those types of programs that could bring you to perhaps even law school. And my daughter's doing that now, and she decided that she wanted to go into real estate law. That typically isn't brought up when you're talking about a real estate development environment, but they are strategically involved in everything that goes on. So that might be something that is a consideration as well. So,
what question for somebody who wants to go the entrepreneurship route? And what would you advise to somebody who wants to eventually build or develop their own firm? Maybe you can throw this to Charlie, since you mentioned that you had some of that thoughts in the beginning of your career as well.
Yeah, well, I think, look, with anything, you got to surround yourself with good people at the end of the day. You got to recognize where your shortcomings are. You know, the guy that thinks that he knows it all, or the gal that thinks she knows it all, is probably the person that's going to fail. I think a lot of my success is understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, right? One of the reasons why I went back to school and got my master's in real estate at George Mason was because, quite honestly, my background in construction, I was lacking the finance side, right? And I just didn't understand that. I wanted to be better at that. So I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you got to align yourself with good people, right? You got to recognize you're not going to do it on your own. Definitely got to have the passion piece. You got to be willing to fight. You got to have that tenant rep broker in you, right? And be scrappy at the end of the day, and be willing to take calls from anybody. I feel like my career has taken off because I kind of have the attitude that anyone who wants to reach out and talk with me and do business, I'm going to talk with them, and it's opened a lot of doors for me.
So we have a few minutes left. So maybe we'll do one round with this question and sort of a final piece of advice for our audience. So do you have any advice for our students that you wish you knew when you were in college? So I'll give a couple of seconds for you guys to think about that question, and maybe start with Chris. Sort of a final words to our students on that note.
There's lots I wish I had known when I was sitting there. I would say the probably the biggest thing is, I think Nick hit on it earlier, but do your research on this stuff before you go into those meetings. It's sitting on, and where you were and then sitting on the other side now, it's incredibly apparent who is interested and who isn't within the first 2 minutes of an interview. Even if both people really want the job really badly, you could just tell who put in the homework, studied everything. And I know I was not ideal. I was not great at that, to be honest, when I was sitting where you were. And so that would be my one biggest thing that everyone told me that when I was in school. I just didn't really listen, to be honest. So I think it's seeing it from the other side. Hopefully that can get through that. And it doesn't take long. It takes 30 minutes. It's not, we're not saying go study 10 hours of stuff. It's take 30 minutes, learn about exactly what they do and how you fit in, and spend 5 minutes crafting your story for that.
Thank you. Kathleen?
I would say,
words of advice?
I would say become very familiar with the development timeline. Understand what area that you want to focus on and that you're interested in, and how that relates to the other parts. I wish I knew that. I was very much into design, engineering, and then when you lift up your head, you're like, oh, that's how it connects. And it would have made a big difference, I think, in terms of the timing of my decisions.
Jacob?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that I wish I knew, specifically that people love to share their wisdom, right? Like, you have 6 panelists here today wanting to talk about our careers and want to share our experience to help you, right? And so Kathleen had mentioned this earlier, finding a mentor or working with people that'll help you progress in that career. I wish I just had done more of that, right? And fostered those relationships, found those mentors, and asked the questions. People like talking about themselves and their experience because we all have unique journeys. And so if you do that and just ask the questions and work with those people, I think you'll find a lot of success in that. And then 2 is time management, knowing how to just prioritize what's really important, right? And part of that is researching the firm that you're interviewing with. Part of it is taking the time to study the different principles that you're learning in class, or taking certification exams to get you to where you need to be, and just doing that extra step. If you do those two things, those are things that I wish I had learned, because it would have got me a lot further than I am today.
Nicholas, any final words?
Yeah, look, I'll hit them really quickly, and I learned these at different stages. So number one is where people first, everything else second. Seek to look for universally what is similar amongst us, not what makes us different. So whether it's someone's more senior and you're nervous about the call, at the end of the day, they're human beings. There's more similar between you than different. Number two is, don't overly put your knowledge in put your confidence in the knowledge you have today, but your resourcefulness and ability to find the answer, to learn that thing and solve that problem. I think a lot of the time people pigeonhole themselves because they feel they don't have the knowledge or so forth. You learn things today that you didn't know yesterday. That happens every day of your life. And I think the third one, and I really well and truly encourage this, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? I mean, businesses and dynamic industries like finance, and I'm sure real estate, constantly trying to innovate, evolve, and so forth. And I think that when you're early in your career, those things can be confusing, can be challenging, but learn to get comfortable with it, because I tell you, that's going to continue to happen. Things will come up. And while you're focused on the task and moving forward, others around you are being held back. And even better, reach back and help bring them forward with you.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think, what would I tell my old self? I mean, a lot of different things, right? I mean, I think, you're young, you're stubborn, right? And to what Jacob was saying, and what Kathleen said, like, listen to people. We're all here. People are going to help. Good people are going to try to help you find a way. And so you need to listen. I think a lot of times when I was younger, I was like, I got this. I want to figure it out myself because I'm smart, I'm good. But in reality, I had to learn a lot of lessons on my own. And I probably could have missed a couple of those if I would have listened to people. And I'll leave you guys with this. We often say here at Stream, we're in the people business. We're not in the real estate business, right? And so we're always looking to hire good people. So don't be afraid to be your true self, I think, at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people in a lot of firms nowadays are looking for authentic people. And so be that.
Thank you, Charlie. And finally, Sean.
Yeah, actually, I'm dovetailing off a little bit what Charlie just said. And it's don't discount how much of a value add you can bring in day one. Everybody here on this panel is looking to work with good people, and we're always looking for the next edge for tomorrow, right? And everybody on the screen brings a unique perspective, unique skill. And there's a lot to be said where if you're bringing your true self, you can create value not only day one, but a lot faster than what you think by digging in, showing the passion behind what you're doing every day. So,
And with that, I'd like to thank our panelists today, Jacob, Nicholas, Charlie, Sean, Kathleen, and Chris. And hopefully the students listening into this call kind of picked up a little something for you to prepare yourself to enter the workforce of finance and real estate, and hopefully work on those things while you're with us here at George Mason University. So on behalf of George Mason and the Office of Career Services, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Eric.